Okay, this is an actual letter that was an openly published letter that was published by the Trojan Democrats. All right, so we are the Trojan Democrats, the University of Southern California's local organization of Democratic students, a chapter of the College Democrats of America, and the largest student-run political organization at USC. As such, we do not speak on behalf of the university. We write to express our deep concern with Rick Caruso, chair of USC's Board of Trustees, recently announcing his candidacy in the Los Angeles mayoral race. To the utmost possible extent, we urge our allies and friends to refrain from supporting Caruso's bid for mayor for a few key reasons. We cannot in good conscience allow for this campaign to continue without speaking up about Caruso's history, and we feel we have a duty to share our personal experiences with his leadership at USC in order to create a more holistic view of the chairman Caruso. This past fall, USC was rightfully ridiculed for mishandling allegations of sexual assault, abuse, and drugging by members of multiple fraternities at the university. Trojan Democrats joined 8 other organizations in founding USC's Student Coalition Against Sexual Violence and subsequently helped organize protests and meetings with the university's administration. USC's administration under Rick Caruso's leadership has failed to take into consideration our cries for help and demands for accountability of both our school's leaders and the assailants. The reality we see every day on campus is wholly at odds with the fiction in a campus-wide email recently authored by Caruso, in which he claims his time on the board brought accountability, responsible leadership, consistent oversight, and effective, transparent reporting practices and cultural change to the university. Listen, we can go on and on about this, but no, that is the exact opposite of what he did. He covered up the sexual assaults, basically, in a nutshell.
For 30 years. So this is who this guy is.
This is who this guy is. I mean, it's just a taste of who this guy is. So the question now is like, how could you possibly know about who this guy is and turn around and put out a tweet that basically says, I'm not getting a $15 minimum wage from Biden. Karen Bass supports Biden.
Has nothing to do with
Ergo, I'm going to vote for Caruso now. Like, in what world is Caruso going to give 2 shits about a $15 minimum wage, let alone any of these other things?
Well, once again, this is a mayoral race, not a federal one, not even a state one. Cenk Uygur's logic makes no sense on multiple levels. First of all, it's like saying, so his big thing against Karen Bass, which by the way, I'm not a fan of Karen Bass. She's a lousy candidate. But his big thing against Karen Bass is, well, she's part of the Democratic establishment. No thanks. And I'm going to vote for Rick Caruso. Well, okay, she is part of the Democratic establishment. You're right. But that's like saying, I'm so tired of the Democratic establishment. I'm not voting for Liz Warren, but I am going to vote for Joe Manchin. Well, wait a second. They're both, but how do you, that doesn't make, he's part of the Democratic establishment too, which in this case, same thing, because now Caruso is proud Democrat. And again, it's technically a nonpartisan office. They're just playing the fiddle to try to win. So it makes no sense on multiple levels. And again, here's the deal. He also said like, oh, Karen Bass is part of the status quo. She'll continue the status quo. Again, this isn't federal or state. This is local. So what is the status quo locally?
Rick Caruso
I'll tell you what the status exactly, because here's the deal. Here's what happens, and this happens in other cities. This isn't unique to just LA. But here is basically a snapshot of what's been going on. Eric Garcetti has made this city into a developer's playground. And what that means,
I'd say he's made it worse, infinitely worse, but I'd say it even started before then, but carry on. I get your point.
Okay, so he has made it infinitely worse. What they do is they will do things like, okay, there's all these developers and they have their cronies and they'll sell stuff off. They'll be like, hey, you should develop here. Check this out. This is a cool opportunity to whatever oligarch, wherever. And the oligarch says, okay, and they buy some stuff. Then what they do is they use their foot soldiers, aka the police, and they push all the homeless people into that area via sweeps and other brutal, inhumane practices. Then after a while, they go, this neighborhood's not working out for you the way we thought it would. We have no idea why. Gee, shucks, we're sorry. Tell you what, we'll take it off your hands, but we're not going to pay what you paid us. I mean, we can't do that, but we'll take it off your hands. You only lose a little bit. The oligarch says, all right, fine, whatever. So they're out of the picture. The cronies in bed with the mayor, they got their property back. They are already in the green because they just sold it. They bought it back, but paid less for it. Now what do? They get their foot soldiers, aka the police, to push the homeless people somewhere else, and they start developing. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. What do you think Rick Caruso's looking to do with
Well,
the
he's part
mayorship?
in. Yeah, no,
Why
but
do you think he
he's already
spent
done that.
millions and millions of dollars, but now he can do it by himself? He get same reason why Trump wanted to be president. He was tired of doing the purchasing. He wanted to be the guy who gets purchased for a change. Same thing here. He's going to do the exact same thing. Why do you think he spent millions and millions of dollars trying to get a job that pays $300,000 a year? He wants to make it even more of a developer's playground. He is the status quo times 20. He has deeper pockets, and he's even more corrupt than Eric Garcetti, which, again, very, very
and
hard.
Far wealthier.
So you have to ask yourself, why would someone like Cenk Uygur, supposed progressive hero Cenk Uygur, why would he support such a candidate? All these terrible things about the guy. He is the establishment you're saying you're trying to go in against. So either Cenk Uygur doesn't know about any of this, which I find hard to believe.
I find that hard to believe.
Let me finish, please. Or Cenk Uygur maybe has some interest coming from developers. Guess what? A developer gave Cenk Uygur a lot of freaking money. Katzenberg is a developer who gave Cenk Uygur millions, and I guarantee that they wouldn't mind seeing someone like Rick Caruso become mayor. So, I mean, this is very deceptive. I'm sorry. Either it is at best completely ignorant of what is going on locally, and it is at worst completely deceptive. And, you know, that guy has over 500,000 Twitter followers. And there's going to be some people now who think, well, I guess Rick Caruso's not so bad.
No, he's
and they're going to go out and vote for him. And that's freaking horrible.
I mean, listen, the fact that you cannot give me a single reason as to why you think Rick Caruso is going to be this progressive whatever better than the establishment is the problem. If your only attack is that the Democrats didn't do this, that, or the other, which is true. I'm not in denial over the fact that Biden did walk away from his $15 minimum wage pledge. That is absolutely the case, and it's wrong and it's messed up.
What does that have to do with the mayorship in LA? Besides
nothing, and it doesn't make Rick Caruso the good guy all of a sudden, or the guy that's going to implement the change that we need. The other thing to keep in mind is Costa-Hawkins, right? I know that this was a bill that happened in the 90s, I think 96, 95, even though that seems like it was a long time ago. It sort of was a catalyst for a lot of the things that you're talking about. Costa-Hawkins was a state bill that basically took local municipalities' rights away, right to have rent control and whatnot away from them. So they could no longer do that. The argument that they used was like, we're going to grandfather in all of these old buildings. There's plenty of supply of affordable housing in the market because these exist right now. Those are going to be there. And so we have to have some sort of a carrot to get developers to come in and actually do something about the buildings that aren't being upkept and whatnot. So it was, you know, this argument that they made that there was an existing affordable housing there was plenty of that and we'd be fine. But what happened was unintended consequences. I don't know. Maybe it was intended. What happened is developers bought these old buildings, they tore them down, and they put much bigger buildings in their place. Ergo, no more rent control. So this has happened, wash, rinse, repeat, to the point where there's literally no affordable housing hardly in the city of LA. And the idea that all of these homeless folks are just drunk drug addicts is just false. We know it's false. You know, I've gone out and actually talked to some of these folks. As you know, Ron, I've met students that are enrolled full-time in college, simply can't afford to do the student loans for the housing, the ridiculously high housing, $3,500 a month for an apartment on top of their tuition. Like, people that work, you know, minimum wage jobs, work for Lyft or Uber, can't afford the rents. It's impossible. So there's no way that the guy that created some of the gentrification that have led us to this place and did so willingly and in a greedy manner is going to fix the problem. It's ridiculous.
No, and it's just so, I mean, look.
Anyway.
He represents a special kind of danger. And look, Karen Bass is a lousy candidate. I'm not, you know, I can't really, you know, stick my neck out for Karen Bass by any means. But she does not represent the danger that Rick Caruso does.
No, she does not.
The only developers and people of stake in that have any incentive to want to see Rick Caruso become mayor. So, you know, when you're going to pretend like, oh, he's he's kind of against the establishment. He's against the status quo. He is the establishment. He is the status quo. You know, so if that's your big thing, A, you should have supported Gina Viola in the primary, A. B, which maybe Cenk Uygur did. I don't know. I can't say for sure one way or another. I have no clue. But, or if you're really like that hyper focused on like, oh, well, the establishment, we need a status quo changing thing. Well, then you should just leave it blank. But
yeah, listen,
you can't say you're
somebody's
going against the status quo and then vote for Rick Caruso.
I agree with you. And this has got nothing to do, like somebody saying pearl clutching from the left. You know what? This has got nothing to do with left versus right. If you want to do something about the income inequality, the plutonymy, the divide that is actually this, you're not going to get there by voting for billionaires that are buying this election for a goddamn good reason. He's not doing this because he's full of charity.
No, he wants to just make it an even bigger playground for all of his developer friends.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's why you see people supporting stuff like 4118, which is like meant to just make it easier to brutalize homeless people. And it was sold under the guise of we're keeping schools safer. Like this is the corruption that is LA politics. And when you're going to try to downplay, if Rick Caruso does become mayor, I mean,
I don't think it's going to happen, having said that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not so sure. I mean, Karen Bass is not, I don't think she's all that popular. And, even for people like me who recognize the danger that is Rick Caruso, it's still hard to like muster any enthusiasm for Bass. Right. I mean, I'm going to vote for her. I could never in a million years endorse her. Like, it's like, well, I'm going to vote for her because I know that if I don't, there's a good chance LA will just turn into a strip mall with an ocean, even more than it already is.
We need to have an understanding, I think, of who Rick Caruso actually is. I doubt people outside of LA have paid much attention to this individual, but he is a guy that is obviously trying to buy the mayor's office for a lot of reasons. He is a real estate developer that's worth billions of dollars and has engaged in a lot of political corruption through the years. We can trace like packaged money. So, for example, this is how this works. They hire a law firm, either like Meyer Brown, Paul Hastings. These are lobbyist groups, but they're legal legal lobbyist groups, meaning they're attorneys that can handle both aspects of that. But they'll take money from their real estate developer clients, they'll package it together, and they'll give it to politicians, whether it's city council members, mayors, whoever else. And they do this in exchange for land entitlement deals or changes in the building code, things that they need to get their developments made. And it's pretty much taken over not only Los Angeles, but the state. And it is corruption. And it is the reason it's a direct cause, in my opinion, of the homelessness in the state. It's a direct cause of the gentrification and homelessness that's happened in Los Angeles. It's a direct cause of a lot of the income inequality. So I want to really highlight this particular individual, not only because he's running for mayor, but he is a case study for others like him, because he's not the only one doing this. So on that note, I want to put up an article. This is, I'm throwing back here to the early 2000s. This was originally in the LA Times. All right, so the Americana at Brand, this is one of Rick Caruso's largest properties. He has another one called The Grove. These are giant malls, more or less, and they also they're mixed use. They have apartments and whatnot. Currently, I think a studio apartment at the Americana at Brand will set you back $3,500. You heard that correctly. Studio.
Yeah,
apartment.
This is not affordable housing. I mean, these people who make it out, well, he wants to build housing. Okay. If you think Rick Caruso is going to do something for housing, I have a 4-bedroom bridge to sell you. All right. That's not what he's looking to do. But let's dive into who he is first.
Let's dive into who he is. Okay. So a property owner at the proposed Americana at Brand site filed a federal lawsuit against Glendale and its redevelopment agency, claiming that the agency does not have the authority to use eminent domain to purchase its land because the property is not blighted. All right, let's stop there. Let me explain something to you. What happened in this particular cause? There were 15 acres of land here in Glendale, 15 acres of land. None of it was blighted. There were small businesses on this land, mom and pop shops. There was a hotel owned by a father-son that was actually a nice enough hotel. There were restaurants, all kinds of places. This land was not blighted, folks. It was not blighted by any means. I live close to it. There was no way you would ever call this blighted. But this was the only way they could take that land away from these small businesses and whatnot and give it to Rick Caruso, which is exactly what the city council did. They said it was blighted. They used eminent domain to take the properties away. And Caruso did not pay a dime for any of the property. Zero. They handed him these 15 acres to do his own development on it, which is now exceedingly pricey apartments, stores like Tiffany and Company. So this is who Rick Caruso is. All right.
We can go into some other things about him. I mean, politically, he is a Trump Republican. He's anti-choice. He covered up years of corruption at USC. I believe it was sexual.
He covered up sexual assault at USC. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. You're correct.
So, I mean, this guy has a long history, and he also, by the way, he is a registered Democrat, and he identifies via his own words, he is a proud Democrat. So we're going to
since January. I mean, he re-registered as a Democrat in January of this year, and he did it because he knows he cannot win an election in the state of California, let alone Los Angeles, unless he is a registered Democrat. This is a political calculation. It has absolutely nothing to do with his beliefs. If you look at his political donations, he has given to both parties, but not equally. He has given money to Kevin McCarthy. He has given money to the California GOP. He has given money to Mitch McConnell. Like, I'm trying to go through some of the extremists that he has supported. So he has supported some extreme candidates on the right that are definitely anti-choice and whatnot. On the left, he's given money to guys like Ted Lieu. I'm sure city council folks. Yeah, the left. But these are in exchange for something. I can guarantee there's some quid pro quo there. There's everything that Rick Caruso does is calculated.
It's a political move, absolutely, because here we'll stick with Los Angeles. The way it works here, for anyone not in the know, our local elections are nonpartisan. So there is no one's running for mayor as a Democrat or Republican. But the way it works here, we are so blue that unless you get endorsements from Democratic clubs, unless you get endorsements from different unions, many who have Democratic leaders, unless you get those things, you have no chance. So you have people who, whatever their actual beliefs or affiliations are, they will kind of play it that way. And someone like a Rick Caruso, he's like, oh yeah, I'm a proud Democrat. I'm part of the Democratic establishment. And he is ingrained in it now. Yeah, he's part of it. That is true. But he's, politically, he's just a MAGA Republican. But, I mean, politically, he's also not really any different from like a Joe Manchin. So that's who he is.
I think he's worse than Joe Manchin, but fair. I agree with that assessment. All right. So just because I know I could literally spend an hour and a half going through all of this Caruso stuff, let's move on to the next thing. I just want everybody to have a basic understanding of who this guy is. So this was an LA Weekly article from 2010, Rick Caruso's greedy land grab. This was in the LA Weekly. All right. Sometimes you got to go with the word resplendent. That's the only adjective that works for the Americana at brand. The Americana is an environment of faux gold sculpture, piped-in music, nostalgia architecture, and a main street named not for some hero, but for the developer of mass consumption, billionaire developer Rick Caruso. There's like a street sign in there that's called Caruso. The mall has helped put Glendale back on the map, a return on investment after the city used eminent domain to obtain much of the land. The city ended up with 15.5 acres downtown, then handed them over for no charge to Caruso. They gave him the land. They just gave it to him. Basically, what we're talking about here is that original land grab wasn't enough for our greedy friend Caruso. He was able to acquire more acreage from these two adjacent other private owned businesses. They were not blighted, but because they were put into this redevelopment area that they said was blighted, they were able to take these properties away. And that is where they moved the new Nordstrom store, right? So the Nordstrom store had been in an older mall that's across the street. They closed that down and moved it into this place. I mean, so this is just how this stuff goes down, right? So you got a billionaire. He wants what he wants. He is able to give donations through packaging, through Mayor Brown, Paul Hastings, whoever he's using at that time.
Well, and let's keep in mind, too, this is how politics in LA works. This is what local politics is. This is the game Eric Garcetti has been playing for a long time. And Rick Caruso has deeper pockets and is infinitely more corrupt, which is hard to pull off. But he is even more corrupt than Eric Garcetti. So we're going to get into, do you want to touch on the USC thing before we get into?
I want to show. Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I want to put up a screenshot, however, of a Caruso staffer responding to a question because everybody needs to read this. All right. So how much affordable housing has Caruso built as a developer? Why this is an important question to ask is because Caruso is actually campaigning on being the cure for homelessness. He's actually campaigning on saying that he's going to do something about affordable housing, even though he's one of the main reasons why we have this problem to begin with. He is actually running his campaign saying that this is what he's going to do. So look at this response. We have a systemic issue, not one that has anything to do with a single developer. Okay, might not be a single developer, but let's not wash your hands of this. The lack of affordable housing starts with the permitting process, which is excessively onerous. I cannot get that out. This drives up costs and makes affordable housing projects inherently unaffordable. Couple that with policies enacted by wealthy NIMBYs to keep their communities segregated, and we get no housing built anywhere. Rick is going, can you believe this, Ron? Rick is going to fight the NIMBYs and cut through the red tape to ensure that we can actually build affordable housing. This is the most insane thing I've ever read.
Well, it's a very long way of saying none. You said, what has he built for affordable housing? None.
He's built none. And so now we're supposed to trust that he's, but it's absolutely insane. He's basically saying it's not his fault because he's a single developer. Although and it's not because it's excessively difficult and driving up costs. It's none of these things that he's talking about. For fuck's sake, he got the land for free for the Americana. Free, 15 acres, handed to him with a bow tie.